I'm going to show you guys how to do a basic welt pocket using 2 welts. So this is a double welt, and with separate pockets or pocket bags. So I've labeled the pieces that I have here. So this actual tutorial you can use in place of what the instructions may have if they seem too convoluted. There's more than one way to skin a cat, which means that there are several ways to put in welt pockets. There is a way that I use when I do menswear on the inside jacket, where you can take the lining and you can fold the fabric to create your welts, which is pretty standard for menswear on the inside. You fold the pocket bag up, fold it down, and it creates welts, and then you do it, and then you sew the pocket bag together. And then for the outer part of the jacket or pants, then you use double welts, which are single pieces. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. And what I've found out, or what I've experienced from pattern instructions, is the welt that you do on the inside of a jacket, where you fold the fabric down and fold the fabric up. The instructions are a little convoluted and can definitely confuse. And another thing about that welt pocket, to me, is it looks a little informal, and I think it belongs on the inside of a jacket. It makes the welts a little bit larger than they actually should be. Carrie, thank you so much for inviting her. Hey, Cree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the double welt, which is the one that you see on the outside of a garment, not the one that you see on the inside. The one that you see on the inside of a garment, what I'll do is I'll link a tutorial on the website in YouTube. I've watched several, and I've picked the ones that I think are really good ones, that get to the point, that don't add a whole bunch of extra stuff, that makes it easy for you to follow. So I'll make sure that I'll put a link here in the group to a YouTube channel that is explaining the welt pocket that I'm talking about, that goes on the inside of a garment. All right, so now here's a tidbit if you want to take notes or whatever. Here's a tidbit for you. If you're working with a pair of pants or a skirt, you want a welt pocket, a double welt pocket on the back, or even a single welt pocket. The rule is, from the waistband, measure 3 inches down. So now what you have to do is you have to find the center of the back panel or the back skirt, whatever it is you're working with. And usually right at the center is where the dart is. Sometimes it's a little off-centered from the dart. Just measure 3 inches down and then find your center, and this is where you're going to draw your lines. Okay, so that's if you ever want to cut a pocket into a pair of pants or skirt that do not originally have a pocket. When I did my nephew's suit for prom, that pants pattern when I did Casey's tuxedo for prom, his pants pattern was a costume pattern that I used as a block. There was no pockets or anything cut into that, so I had to cut my own pockets into that pattern. Hey, Miss Johnson. She's here, you guys. Hi, Kim. She's here. Everybody's here. So there's going to be, I'm sure, more people joining. All right. So what I'm going to use as my pants, and this is what I did for you guys. I found some little pieces of cotton, quarter fats and fat quarters, and I cut them up. So this is going to be our pants and our skirt, this purple flower thingamajiggy. Our welts are yellow, and I wrote on them with Sharpie marker. Then we're going to have the pocket facing, and a lot of the women's garments do not have a pocket facing. Men's garments have pocket facings. I think this is ultra important, because what happens is, as you're walking, the welts move and open. Nobody wants to see the inside of your pocket, so there's a facing that goes behind the double welts. That's the exact same fabric as whatever suit you're wearing or whatever skirt you're wearing. So when the welt moves around, you can't tell. So I tell everybody to say this: if you're a lady and you're doing a welt pocket on a pattern, from a pattern, there's not going to be a pocket facing. Add one. You can add one. It's just a piece of square fabric. Okay. And what I'll also do is the dimensions of this pocket bag and all of that good stuff, I'll put them on the website. I'll tag them somewhere near this video or whatever. So if you want to add a facing, or you just want a regular pocket bag, you can use these dimensions and the sizes of the stuff that I'm using here. The only thing that's not realistic is this here. This is not a pair of pants. It's not a skirt. It's just a piece of fabric. All right. And my fabric, this piece is like 11 by 12. It's enough for me to get everything on here for you guys to get a good view of everything I'm going to do. Okie dokie. So now this little piece right here, pocket facing, the pocket facing is 2.5 by 6.5 or 6.5 by 2.5. And this is a little bit bigger. So now the standard, this is a note for you to write down. The standard welt pocket. You know how we see those little lines in that little picture with the two triangles at the end? That is generally 5.5 inches wide. 5.5 inches wide, and then a 1/2 inch in height. So it's a 1/2 inch in height, 5.5 inches wide. That's how wide that little rectangle. Those are the dimensions of that little rectangle that we see on the pattern piece. Let me, for those of you that may be LOST, I'm going to kind of help you out here with my drawing. So does that look familiar to everybody? That's that little welt pocket picture that we see on the patterns. The dimensions for this is 5.5 by 1/2 inch. Okay, 5.5 inches long, 1.5 inches tall. Okay. Now, all right, is everybody with me? Is everybody with me? You're watching while you're answering. Hey, Antoinette. Okay, now, what you need to do for your facing pieces and for your welt pieces, you need to interface them. And I've already done that. I put interfacing on the back of my welts. I put interfacing on the back of my facing. I would suggest that you use this interfacing that's kind of thick. It's from Joann Fabrics. It looks almost like cotton. It's kind of a linen-y looking interfacing. It's nice and strong, good to use on a welt pocket. It'll keep the welts nice and crisp. But for our demo, I got the cheap stuff because I don't want to get out the good stuff. All right. So this interfacing that I'm talking about, it's a little cottony looking. It's what's used for shirt collars. A little bit more expensive. I think it's like $6 a yard at Joann, but it's worth it. You just need a small piece for a couple of welt pockets and just keep that small piece going forward, unless you're going to buy it for something else. Okay. We have a top pocket bag, and we also have a bottom pocket bag, and I will also put the dimensions of these on the in the group, so you'll have the dimensions of these if you want to cut and use my instructions instead of the ones that come with the pattern. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to go 3 inches down because this is my, let me find my center. And here's a good way to mark the center. You can just fold it, and whenever I have fold lines and all that good stuff, I do is I put a little clip. Then that way I don't have to write nothing. I don't have to do all of that extra stuff. Now I got a little clip right here. It's letting me know where my center is. Okay. So from the center, let me give you guys a table view. Hopefully this will work. Perfect. Okay, so from the center down, I'm gonna measure my 3 inches. And this is where I'm going to draw my lines. But I'm going to draw mine on the wrong side and the right side. I'm just going to draw myself a little line here so I'll know where to put my interfacing. And I'm going to be interfacing the back 5.5 divided by 2. This little line here, I'm just going to make sure that when I put my interfacing on the back, that it's in the same area as I draw my lines, which will be on the right side of the fabric. All right, here's my little interfacing piece. I just put it right here, so when I start doing my drawing and my cutting and everything, this piece is nice and stiff and ready to go. It's up to you. If you don't feel comfortable with trying to target the right area, let's go ahead and interface the whole piece all the way across. You can do that. And then you kind of know, okay, well, I know this is not, 5 inches. Use some common sense and be like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut it here. So you just got to make sure that this piece is a little, let's make it 6.5 inches. It needs to be at least an inch longer than the pocket that we're going to draw. All right, now I am on the right side. Oh, I can see it through. I'm going to try and I want to use something that we'll be able to see. I'm going to go ahead and use the Sharpie marker. All right, so hold on one second, y'all. I'm about to figure something out real quick. 5.25. Okay, hold on one second. I'm doing a little bit of math. 5.5 divided by 2 is 275. Oh, I can't even do this. Duh. There we go. There's my starting point. 6.5 was the piece. 5.5. Okay, so let me tell you guys what I just did. From my 3 inches down, because I told you guys the welt pocket lines are 5.5 inches long. So I could have the center of my welt pocket here at the center. I divided 5.5 by 2, which is 275. But since this little piece right here is 6.5 inches, I just folded it in half. This is when the brain starts kicking in. And I just put half at the dot, mark 6.5, and then another, and I folded it to the other side, and then I marked that. Now I got my 6.5 inch line, and then all I gotta do is reduce it. Wait a minute, there's my 6.5 inch line. And all I gotta do is reduce it so that it's 5.5 inches. So that means I gotta get rid of a 1/2 inch on each side, a 1/2 inch here, and then a 1/2 inch here. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to draw my lines. I'm ready to draw my lines. So now I'm getting ready to draw my pocket lines. So on the pattern, usually the cutting line is solid. I'm gonna try and make these nice and dark so you guys can see. Let's pull in a little bit closer. And I am gonna hold these up so that you can see. And then I wanna go a 1/4 inch because my little box is supposed to be only a 1/2 inch. And then what I think everybody should do is your center line, and I'll show you this as soon as I get done drawing. Your center line needs to be the length of the welt pocket, which is 5.5 inches. Okay? Center line is 5.5 inches. Then I got the top of my rectangle and the bottom of my rectangle. Those are, it's a total 1/2 inch from top to bottom. Okay, so in my center line splits them. That means now I got 1/4 inch at the top, 1/4 inch at the bottom of that center line. Okay, you can see my top and bottom lines right here are longer than my center line. That's okay, and I recommend that you do that because that helps you when we start sewing. Okay. So now this is my cutting line here in the center. That's where I'm going to be cutting my pocket open. All right, so now I'm going to connect my lines and I'm going to make those longer. And I'm going to show you guys this as well. This is another thing that I would suggest that you do. And now remember, I'm using just regular chalk. Let's just imagine this is chalk, not Sharpie. Now you can see my rectangular box here, 1/4 inch here, 1/4 inch here, 5.5 inches from end to end. And you can see how I have my rectangle, but my lines that I use to draw my rectangle are longer. And that is to help me line my welt up and all of that good stuff. So I always want to extend my lines so I can see when I start covering things up, and you guys will see that. Okay, everybody with me so far? Now, you know how they tell you to cut little triangles at the end? I'm going to draw my triangles, but my triangles need to be 1/2 inch away. And I'm going to show you that. I'm drawing those lines right now. There we go. Here's my triangle line right here. I drew it. It's 1/2 inch from here to the end of my rectangle. 1/2 inch. Now I'm going to draw my little diagonal lines to make my triangles or to make my cut angles. Okay, I drew my angles. Now it's looking more like a pattern piece. Everybody can see that? Those little triangles are 1/2 inch from the edge to the line. That's 1/2 inch, and that's where I'm going to be cutting when I do my sewing, okay? This is what I suggest that your pocket lines look like instead of just the regular rectangle. When you start getting good at welt pockets or getting used to seeing welt pockets, then you can go ahead and draw the triangle. But for those of you that are having problems, or you can draw just the rectangle. But for those of you who are having problems keeping things even or are kind of confused about the process, make sure you overdraw. The only line that should be drawn correctly is your split line right here. 5.5 inches wide. This 5.5 inch wide, and then your little diagonal lines from center to, wait a minute, from center to edge, okay? So you can see when I drew my rectangle, I made my lines a little longer here. Then I went ahead and drew my edges and made them longer here, just so that they hang over, and you guys will see why. Okay, so now I have my pocket piece drawn, and my interfacing is actually right where I need it to go. It's on the other side of my little triangle marking. So I know now my cuts and everything are going to be reinforced. Okay, now I'm gonna go to the welts. The welts are 6.5 inches by 1 inch. 6.5 inches by 1 inch. And we're going to fold them in half, which is going to give us a 1/2 inch, and then we're going to draw a line to make this half. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to fold my welts now. And they're interfaced, and my interfacing is coming off. Yes. Okay, so now I'm just ironing my welts on the right side. You iron them in half. And I always take my clapper and smash them because I want my welts to be nice and flat. You don't need to be flopping open and all of that good stuff. Okay, so here's one folded in half. Let's get the other half of the welt. Or welt number 2. How about that? Not the other half of the welt. Oh, that's far away. Okay, so now I got my welt here. So now what I'm going to do, just to help myself, is I want to mark my welt so I'll know where to sew. Welts are 1/4 inch wide. Right now, this is the 1/2 inch. So I'm getting ready to draw a 1/4 inch line straight through. And I'm using my ruler. Use your ruler. Don't be guessing. I know we like the eyeball, but sometimes we need some exact measurements. Okay, it looks a little off. I'm using this gel pen, so when you make a mistake, you can iron it, and you can start over. I'm gonna do from the folded edge because I'm on this bumpy surface. All right, there we go. And this is why you need to interface your welts, because they're so small. They're only 1/4 inch. You need them to be, there you go. You need them to be nice and stiff. All right, so I just did 1/4 inch on that side. So I'm going to do a 1/4 inch on this side. Okay, so now I just drew a 1/4 inch line through my welt. Let me open it up a little bit. Again. Can you see? I'm kind of at a weird angle. There we go. There's my 1/4 inch line through my welt. All right, now I'm ready to put my welts on my fabric here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin them down, and I'm going to show you guys what I did here. And there's some pins. And this is where we start sewing. And here is one of the keys here that I want to show you. Now you can see I have my welt pinned to the pocket part, okay? If you can see the line that I drew, it actually meets, wait, hold on. This pen is in the way. Get this pen out the way. The line that I drew meets the line right here. So that's where you line that up. That's why I said, make sure you extend this line right here. Don't guess where the placement is supposed to be. Make yourself some guides. So that's what this is. Now you can see the welt line and the line on the rectangle are matched up. And that's what I want. And the raw edge is also butted up against the center line. Let me see if fold that up a little bit. See that center line right there? The edge of the welt is also, the raw edge of the welt is butted up against that center line. So now what I'm gonna do is on the line that I drew, my 1/4 inch line, now that I have a gauge to follow, I'm gonna stitch my welt on that line, but I'm gonna stop sewing at my 5.5 inch marks. See these, wait a minute. I'm looking at the camera and I should be, there we go. Okay, 5.5 inch marks are where my fingers are. That's why I'm gonna stop sewing. And that is the key to a good looking welt. You gotta stop sewing where you need to stop sewing. Right here on this side, right at this line is where I stop sewing, and then right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make myself a stop line on my welt. Now that I have them pinned to my skirt or whatever you want to call this, I can just draw myself a line where I can stop. And I usually do this instead of drawing a 5.5 inch line and then drawing like an eye mark, almost like a buttonhole. I do it like this, so I know now that I wait until I get it pinned on. Now I know that these are gonna line up. Instead of just saying, okay, I'm gonna draw a line at 5.5 and 5.5 and 5.5. I wait until I pin this on my fabric. Then I know I can draw my lines with a ruler and line it up. And you can see that's lined up quick. I mean, perfect. So now I have my area where I'm gonna stop sewing right here. And then I'm gonna backstitch. All right, and then when I'm done with this side, then I do the exact same thing on this side. And I'm not gonna pin this side down because I'm getting ready to go over to the sewing machine, but I am gonna draw the lines just so you guys can see. Well, I guess I will. I'll pin it down. Okay, now I got both welts on there. You can see both welts attached to both of them. Raw edges are butted up against the center line. My edges stop. I got my edges here lined up with the line that tells me how long my welt pocket is. I can see my extensions are matching. All of my extended lines that I drew here and here, those are all matching. Everything's matched up. Now I'm ready to sew. All right, so we're gonna go over to the sewing machine. And do me a favor, you guys, hold up on the questions until, hold up on any questions until I get to the end. So if you have any questions, make sure you make a note of it. And I'll handle them when I get to the end. All right, so now we're taking this over to the sewing machine and we're gonna get ready to sew. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one off and I'm gonna sew one welt at a time. Not pin them together and stitch everything. Don't do that. All right, walking over to the sewing machine. And actually, I'll be doing the rest probably from over here because I won't need to go back over. Well, I will need to go back over when I get ready to press. All right, so let me get some area here. How is that? Is that picture okay for you guys? Looks a little crazy to me. Is that better, or I'm seeing glare? Let me know if you guys are you seeing glare, or is it okay? I could be seeing glare because I have the screen tilted down. So let me know if you guys are seeing everything okay. Let me see. I see some crying faces. I see some mad faces. I see some laughing faces. Okay, so let me try this again. Nancy says it's okay. All right, so since Nancy says it's okay, we're gonna go with like it is now. So I don't have to worry about seeing the glare. All right, I'm taking this welt off because I'm gonna do one welt at a time. And I'm ready to start sewing. And I got contrast and thread in here. Ladies, 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 when you sew welts, don't go speeding and up and down, because if you go speeding, you're going to eventually mess up and your edges are going to be uneven. So this is about the speed that I go when I do my welts, and I just want to make sure I do my speed nice and slow so I can stay on the line that I drew. Okay, I'm at my point. Oh no, I still have a little bit more to go. I'm ready to go back. I usually do a back stitch and then one forward stitch. So I go back, forward, and back. So I stitch at least 3 times. And what that does is that makes that edge nice and strong where we're actually going to be turning the welts. All right, so now I got that side done. I have all my lines ready. So I am relining up my welt, my second welt. I'm lowering my needle at my starting point. And now I'm ready to sew. I usually do about 3 stitches forward, 3 stitches backwards, and then I go forward again. This is the part that you really got to pay attention, because this is what makes or breaks your welts. So let's do that here. All right, a hand wheel to the line. Okay, my welts are sewn on. Got a little bit of extra space here, so I'm interested to see how that's going to go. You can see where I stopped sewing here is right at the line. Same on this side. So what happens is if I lift up my welt ends, and this is a good way to check, make sure that these are in the same area. Now this one is moving a little bit. I'm going to go back and I'm going to restitch that area. Got to make sure that it stays down and that it's not moving around and that you got enough thread there. Okay, so I just restitched that area. And you can do that. It's okay. Clip off the threads. And now I got a nice stitch here. You can actually see my stitches are the same. That's the main thing that you want to get when you do welt pockets. You want to make sure that your stitching lines that you just added are stopping in the same spot. And you can see the stitching here on the back of the fabric. You can see the purple stitches are in the exact same spot. That's the purpose of extra lines and extra markings, so you can make sure that you line stuff up correctly. All right, now it's time to cut, and we're going to be cutting on the line. And what I usually do is I will fold the fabric and then start my cut here in the middle. I don't use a seam ripper to get in there because I need some precision. Make sure you use some nice scissors with a good sharp tip. All right. And then all I'm doing now is cutting on the center line, and I'm going to stop at the little V. Remember the little V that I drew? You can see it right here. And then I'm going to the other side, and I'm stopping at the little V right there. Okay, so now my middle is cut open. My pocket is cut open to the 5.5 mark, which is here and here. Now I'm getting ready to take a 1/2 inch diagonal cut. And when you do your diagonal cuts, what you want to do is cut to the edge of the thread. Don't cut through it. Don't cut too deep. You got to really be careful when you cut. And this is another reason why you want to draw lines, because these guides are everything. I'm moving this out the way. All right, so now I'm making my little triangles. You know those little triangles that you get when you turn the welts. Good. And good. Okay, so now I cut to my diagonals, and you can see the little triangles here. Let me turn it this way. This is on the wrong side. You can get a better view. And you can see the triangles here. Now I have them cut, and I am ready to turn my welts to the inside. Okay, I'm turning them. And then I will tell you guys a little trick, something that I do to keep my welts nice. Okay, now they're turned here. I'm glad I used yellow so you can see the welt, and I labeled it. Okay, so before we go to the iron, I'm going to kind of finger press it down. I have my little triangle here. You can see the little triangle there. And it's when you flip your welt, it's underneath the welt. And the number one thing that you want to do is, and I'm going to press this first, but I want to mention this to you guys. When you turn your welts to the wrong side, you want to make sure that these two edges, see those right there? You want to make sure that they are right next to each other, because if they overlap or something goes wrong, then it's going to affect the corner of your welt on the other side. So you want to make sure that these two are right next to each other, and then the little triangle is right on top of it. Okay, so these welt sides need to be right next to each other. All right, so now before I stitch them down, I'm going to run to the iron and I'm going to press this down. So I'll be right back. Okay, there's my welt. You can see my over-exaggerated lines that I told you to draw, those extra lines before you draw your 5.5-inch rectangle. Okay, now you can see where I pressed, and my welt legs, I'll call them the welt legs, these are right next to each other. They're not overlapping, one's not on top of the other. To continue with your welt, once you get that part done, you need a needle and thread, and you need to hand baste this pocket closed, because if you get to working on it, it's going to flip all over the place. It's going to open up and all of that good stuff. You don't want that. So before we sew on the triangles, hand baste this closed. And what I do is like a diagonal baste. If you're not sure what a diagonal baste is, look it up on the internet and you'll see diagonal basting. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this welt up real quick. And I have some, the thread I'm using is silicone thread. Silicone thread has a little bit of wax on it. You can order it from Wall Wack. And it's great for hand stitching. Makes hand stitching real easy. Ouch. I'm used to wearing a thimble and I don't feel like getting it out. So. And when you get done with the diagonal basting, you come down and then you go back up. So I'm going to try and do this real quick or make them kind of big. It's very important to make sure you close your welt pocket until you finish your construction. And you make a note of that, because on commercial patterns, when they do welt pockets, they don't tell you to close them up. Not all the patterns tell you to close them up. They have you adding pocket bags and everything with the welt just flopping around. And, you know, that makes for kind of a pain in the butt. So you want to go ahead and you want to close it up. And when I'm done with this, I'll show you guys the diagonal baste. Uh-oh. All right. Okay, so what happens is when you get back to the end of the thread, now here's about hand stitching. When you get back to you do the diagonal basting all the way back, you do it all the way down in one direction, then you come back up in the other direction and it forms these little X's. So I'm not going to go all the way up with the X, but definitely want to check out diagonal basting. If you have the Reader's Digest book of complete sewing, it's actually in the hand stitching part So learn how to do that when you're doing welt pockets. If you want them to look professional, then you need to do what the professionals do. All right, I'm going to stop here. Okay, now I'm ready to take this part, which is my triangle, and I'm going to stitch straight across the welt legs and the triangle. Okay, and I turn it over. So now my triangle is actually facing me, and I'm going to stitch very slowly in this area. And when you stitch here, you do not want to stitch on the pocket, on the pants or the skirt. You want to stitch on the legs of the welt, and you want to stitch across the triangle. And I'll show you that when I am done. And this is what gives us the other side of the rectangle. And I was taught to reinforce that area, which means to sew more than one time. So I stitch forward and I stitch backward on this area right here. All right, I'm going to do the other side. And now I'm back stitching, and you can see how slow I am stitching. This is not a race. It's all about precision. And if you sew for other people, it's a little extra money you can add to your repertoire. All right, this is the other side. And now you can see where it's been stitched, okay? See how it's nice and square there? Make sure when you do your stitching, welt pocket legs need to be right next to each other. That is the key on getting this perfect rectangle, okay? Everybody see that? I'm glad I used two totally different colors. You can actually see now, okay? And then after we do this part, we're now ready to, oh no, well, we're not ready to edge stitch yet. Okay, no, never mind. Back that. We're gonna attach the pocket. Okay, now for attaching the pocket top and the pocket facing, we're getting ready to attach the pocket bag. Now we have the welts. The welts are in, stitched closed, okay? And since I just stitched this, I do need to give it another press, but I'm not going to go to the iron. But every time you sew, you need to press. You know that. All right, so now what I'm going to do is we're going to attach the bottom pocket bag, and I'll leave the dimensions of these to the bottom welt. So when you go to the back, here's the bottom welt. So we're going to attach this to the bottom. And then when you flip it up, you can see where the two raw edges are going to meet, okay? This is our line that we stitched to flip our welt inside out. So now we're just going to sew 1/4 inch and stitch these two together. The pocket bag is the same length or the same width as the dart legs. Everybody see that? Same width. So you just line it up, and now I'm ready to stitch them together. And you can restitch over the stitching that you did. I like to stitch literally like about a 32nd inch under it. I don't want to stitch right on top of my welt stitching because that may cause an issue. So I'll show you this in a couple seconds. there's two stitches there. You can see the purple stitch and the white stitch. The purple stitch is the actual welt pocket. The white stitch is my pocket bag stitched to my pocket here, okay? So now I have the bottom of the pocket stitched on. Then I'm gonna take the top pocket and the pocket facing, and I'm gonna sew these together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Right sides together. And let me give you guys a sewing machine view. And these are sewn together at a 1/2 inch, and then they're sewn to the top. We're almost finished. Okay, I sewed my facing to my top pocket. And remember, I was talking about your facing needs to be the same fabric as whatever it is you're wearing, your skirt or whatever you're using for your welts. And then your pocketing can be any fabric or muslin. It's up to you. All right, you can serge that raw edge if you want. You can serge that or do whatever you want. I'm just going to leave it raw for now since this is just a demo. Okay. Now, see that? It says bottom pocket. Then we're going to sew the top facing to the top pocket or the top welt. And you can see the top welt is exposed. So now I'm just doing raw edges together. And I'm going to sew these two together at 1/4 inch. And I'm going to sew on this side because it's a little bit easier than sewing on that side. And I'm sewing just a smidget below my original welt stitching. Okay, there it is. I got my top facing and the top of the pocket and the bottom pocket. Now I'm ready to stitch the pocket together. And when I stitch the pocket together, I'm going to restitch here all the way down, all the way around, and then back up the side, past my little thingy here or my little triangle here, and then I'm going to stop. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to pin these together. And what I usually do when I do a welt pocket like this, I'll either serge the pocket after I'm done stitching or pink the edges. I really would suggest that you pink the edges, because what happens is if you do pink and shears all the way around, it doesn't show through. It stops show through, which is really nice. Stops the show through. All right, so I'm going to flip this here on the little side where my triangle is exposed, and I'm getting ready to sew. This is about a 1/2 inch all the way around. I'm going to do 3/8 of an inch all the way around because I already have my side done already, and then 3/8 of an inch gives me the pocket a little bit bigger. All right, and I'm pivoting. For men's pants, there's the inside of the pocket is French seamed, and it's because they use their pockets way more than we do. So they're just saying, okay, well, we're going to French seam a man's pocket because he's going to get a little bit of action. He's keeping his wallet in it. But there has been times where I just did this to men's pockets as well. And I'm going to cut. I'm turning my little light back on. And guess what? We are done. I'm going to open up my basting. I should have just pulled it out, but I went on and cut it like a bonehead. Now I got to get all of these little threads out of here. This little piece out of here. And I'll show you guys how the facing looks. And we're done. Here's the facing. See that right there? It says facing. So that's what happens when the facing goes in. It goes right behind the opening of the pocket. So everything looks the same. So when you walk in and stuff, all they see is yellow. They can't see where the pocket actually splits. Okay, that's it. It is that simple. And I want to make sure that you guys give it a try and use some scrap fabrics and try it. The key to welt pockets is making sure that this part right here is not over sewn, making sure that it's nice and square and it doesn't overlap. And it's also making sure that your welts are the same size. So when you do all of this extra drawing and all these extra lines, you have a ton of guides and a ton of things you can use to help you make sure that your welt pocket goes in 100%. Here's the pocket. We have the top pocket, the bottom, we have the top pocket facing, or the regular pocket, and then we have the bottom pocket attached to the facing, and then each one gets attached to the top welt and the bottom welt. So it's pretty easy. And then after they're sewn together, you can see inside. Okay, even if you have to write on them like I did, just use the gel marker that disappears when you press the iron. You can write on all these pieces: welts, facing, you know, make some markers so you can know what piece goes to what, you know, the arm bone's connected to the shoulder bone, that kind of thing. Always make yourself guides and things to follow, and you'll be fine. Okay? Anybody else got any questions? Thank you, Miss Carol. Want to have measurements too. What kind of gel pen is that? It's called X something or other. Friction gel pens. You can get those at Walmart, and they come in a pack. And whenever the heat hits them, the ink disappears. So you can get you some friction pens and you can mark all on your fabric. But for you all, I use the Sharpie. Don't use the Sharpie marker. Doesn't come out of fabric. Okay. A welt is a welt is a welt. Yes, Tanya, I say that a lot, don't I? But it is. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. Would you do it the same way for a purse inside and out? Yes. The only difference for a purse is or when you do a zipper, you're not adding the little welties. You're just putting a zipper in there. Same thing. So if you know how to do one of those welt zippers, it's the same thing. You're just not adding the little yellow part. It's just literally the rectangle, and then the zipper is put in there neatly, and then you just stitch around the zipper. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to edge stitch the pocket, but we all know how to edge stitch. You just stitch close to the edge all the way around. Okay? And do that before you stitch the pocket. Because if this were to be edge stitched now, I'd close my pocket up, and I don't want to do that. So you just edge stitch it before you sew your pocket closed. Take the top part and put it here, the bottom part there, and you literally sew halfway, all the way around halfway. Then you bring the top part down, and then you sew around the top of the welt. And then you can go ahead and close that pocket up. Okay? All finished, all done.